Husam Zomlot, he's the head of the Palestinian mission to the United Kingdom, a well-known face on the show. Husam, great to have you back on the show. Let me pick up, really. I wanted to start off talking about the UNGA, but now we just had these news coming in that the Israeli Security Cabinet, as Jeremy was just reporting there, has approved an expansion of this Rafah operation. Now, what we don't know is the timeline here, when it will happen, but how imminent it is. But speak to this moment right now that for months I've been hearing for guests on my show calls from politicians and NGOs talking about what this would mean, right, and going into Rafah. Now this is looking like it will happen. Your reaction?
Well, Netanyahu has learned over the last 7 months, perhaps the last 7 decades, that he can cross every red line. The US has told him that this is a red line. The UK, Europe, the rest of the world, the UN, the ICJ, the ICC, the Security Council, name it. He doesn't care, simply because he will not get the serious consequences. He hears many statements and sympathies and warnings. Should he go to Rafah, it will be catastrophe beyond description. You're talking about 1.5 million people, 600,000 children are scattered in the streets of Rafah. Can you imagine what will happen with his tanks and the way he did it in the north and in the middle of Gaza? He simply has made up his mind. That is Netanyahu, the Israeli government. They have made up their mind. They want to press ahead all the way to actually erase the Palestinian people.
So when you saw this decision by the United States to pause the weapons, to pause the bombs being sent to Israel, what did you think? I
thought that was important. I thought it broke a taboo. Maybe it came...
Does it shift, Does it shift?
Maybe it came 100,000 people killed and maimed late, but better late than ever.
Yeah.
Yet, I just heard you quoting Netanyahu that he says we will fight with our
fingernails.
Fingernails.
Which is in an interview just overnight.
Isa, he's fighting with American 2,000 pounds, tons, dropping it on our families and homes. The moment he's deprived of that, he will not fight. And you said pause. Why the US should pause after all these atrocities? The US should revoke the license of exporting arms to Israel. There has to be an arms embargo, and then Netanyahu will listen. And
do you think he's going to listen? Because according to that interview that we heard overnight, it doesn't seem like he's listening. He's been asking for, the US has been asking for plans for Rafah. They haven't received it. They've said there's a red line. He's still going ahead. So what other pressure is there?
He's not listening because he's not getting any consequences. And he knows that pause is going to be just for a few days. He knows he will get it. And he has seen some of the Republican senators writing only this morning against their own president for even pausing for a few days, pausing to continue the genocide using American weapons. And these huge bombs that are made...
1,000-pound bombs,
they're not made for such a situation. And therefore, the US must also be watching. I've seen a letter only a couple of days ago by a few senators, Republican senators, sent to the ICC saying, you have been warned. Did you see that letter?
No.
They were threatening the ICC should they actually start investigating Israel's war crime.
Hold on, but it's not just...
It's almost like The Sopranos. The Sopranos, some US politicians are literally threatening international courts to shield Israel. This is what Netanyahu knows. So he knows in the end, he can do what he wishes.
What about the UK here? Because the UK also, not comparable in terms of size of weapons that it offers. Should the UK be also pausing?
Of course, the UK should not only pause, the UK should impose an arms embargo. And the UK, it is upon the UK own domestic legal responsibility and international law, under international law, that the UK should stop. After the ICJ officially put Israel on trial for genocide and said genocide is plausible here, there's no conversation. Every third party that provides such weapon is complicit. It's as simple as that. And that's why these countries should watch it. These countries should make sure that they are not part of committing genocide. And not just that. Look at the inconsistency in the positions of the US and the UK. On the one hand, they say they want a two-state solution, and when we go to the General Assembly, this overwhelming support, the world support, the US stands only with few countries, Micronesia and Palau, whatever that is, isolating itself only for the sake of objecting our right to self-determination. The Israeli ambassador to the UN stands and shreds the UN charter that created Israel. Really? And the UN Charter that talks about people's right to self-determination as inalienable, that talks about the inadmissibility of acquiring land by force. So the issue is the US is giving lip service, but in effect, it's double talk and double face.
Hypocrisy?
So is yes, hypocrisy and double standards, and really, just supporting Netanyahu's, Israel's slow genocide for 70 years without wanting to take the real political capital, invest the political capital to actually move us in a different direction.
Because we're running out of time, and I think it's really important for us to talk about what happened in the UN today. The UN vote, 143 countries, it's symbolic, it's historic. What does that say to you, the fact that the 143 countries there voted, of course, you still need to go the next step, but voted to recognise that, to give it more rights to Palestine?
It's not just symbolic, it's actual. It represents the will of the people of the world. You're talking about all continents. You're talking about the countries that really represent the millions upon millions. You're talking about governments that have decided to listen to their own people, and not just in the US, but everywhere. And today, for us, represents a verdict by the world that they will stick to the UN Charter, they will stick to international law, and they will defend what is right here. However, the scene was clear. The issue is the US, primarily the US. And of course, all these countries that abstain. Why did you abstain? The US says because this has to be an outcome of negotiation. Seriously? Did you wait for negotiation when you recognized Israel? You didn't wait for negotiation. You didn't even consult us when you recognized Israel. Then all this is a pretext to delay. And then your entire talk about two-state solution is not very serious. But, however, we move on from this moment when we heard from the absolute vast majority of the world, and we move forward, and we will come back to the UN and to the UN Security Council every session if needed until Palestine is a full member state and until the US stops allowing Israel to drag the US into a genocide, drag the US into regional war, and now dragging the US into undermining the US democracy by going after these students that are trying to fight for justice and for liberation.
That we're seeing not just in the US, we're seeing protests right around the world. I wish we had more time. I did hear today from the EU's top chief, UN chief, basically saying, Josep Borrell, saying they expect Ireland, Spain, as well as other European countries, Norway, several on the 21st of May, I believe, to recognise Palestinian statehood. Is something that a conversation that we've had with the Spanish Foreign Minister right here on the show. Husam, always great to have you on the show. Great to see you. Thanks very much.